Happy Monday, first grade. All right, we're going to start a new story for Reader's Workshop. So today's story is going to be Wangari's Trees of Peace. But before we start, we always want to talk about that comprehension skill. So today's comprehension skill is going to be talking about the central idea of a story. And the central idea of a story is what it's mostly about. This can also be called the main idea. Remember, we talked about main idea in another story. Can you think of what that story was? I'll give you a hint. There were chameleons in it. Good job. Chameleons are cool. So when we talked about chameleons are cool, we talked a lot about the main idea. We made those main idea pizzas. And then we talked about something else. So today we're going to be talking about it again. We're going to talk about details. So today, instead of talking about pizza, they decided to look at dessert. So when we look at dessert, we have an ice cream sundae. And the details are like the scoops of ice cream, those smaller ideas that support the central idea. So we're going to look, if you have an ice cream sundae with no ice cream, it's not going to be an ice cream sundae. And that's the same as a story. If you have a story, the main idea isn't going to really be obvious if you don't have details that help you understand it a little bit more. So when we listen to our story, I want you to listen for that central idea and for the details as well, okay? Before we read, we're going to look at that cover, and I want you to make a prediction. Do you predict that the story is fiction or nonfiction? So turn and talk and see. What do you predict? Now, if I look at it a little closer, I notice that it says Wangari's Trees of Peace, a true story from Africa. If I know it's a true story, that would help me understand that it's going to be a nonfiction story. We're going to look at this quote in the back. It says, "People are fighting over water, over food. We plant the seeds of peace." Can you turn and talk with someone at home and think about what that means? What does it mean to plant seeds of peace? How can you plant seeds of peace? What do you think you could do? And that quote is from Wangari, so that's one of her ideas for us. All right, we're going to start reading our story. Remember, we'll stop and talk. If we stop and talk, you can always just pause it and answer that question or turn and talk with someone. Also, remember to listen for that vocabulary. So our word today is hall. If you hear hall, give a good thumbs up. Or stop it and turn and talk with someone about what happens. You can listen to your other vocab words as well and be that vocab detective and listen for them, okay? Wangari's Trees of Peace. The earth was naked. For me, the mission was to try to cover it with green. Wangari Maathai. Wangari lives under an umbrella of green trees in the shadow of Mount Kenya in Africa. She watches the birds in the forest where she and her mother go to gather firewood for cooking. I want you to think about Wangari's childhood and look at those settings. Do you think it's the same or different from yours? How can you think about it? She helps harvest the sweet potato, sugarcane, and maize from the rich soil. Again, how is her life like yours, or is it different? How is it different? Think about that. Wangari shines in school, and when she grows tall like the trees in the forest, she wins a scholarship to study in America. Six years later, her studies are over. Wangari returns to her Kenya home, and sees a change. What has happened, she wondered. Where are the trees? What do you think has happened? What happened to her home? What happened to the trees? How do you think she feels? Wangari sees women bent from hauling firewood miles and miles from home. She sees barren land where no crops grow. And where are the birds? Thousands of trees have been cut down to make room for buildings, but no one planted new trees to take their place. Will all of Kenya become a desert, she wonders, as her tears fall? So we notice in the words and the picture that we can tell how Wangari is feeling. Wangari thinks about the barren land. I can begin to replace some of the lost trees here in my own backyard, one tree at a time. She starts by planting 9 seedlings. How would you describe Wangari? What would be a good way to describe her? Watching the seedlings take root gives Wangari the idea to plant more, to start a farm for baby trees, a nursery. In an open space, she plants row after row of tiny seeds. Next, Wangari convinces the village women that planting trees is a good thing, and she gives each one a seedling. Our lives will be better when we have trees again. You'll see, we are planting the seeds of hope. I noticed that quote from earlier, the trees of hope instead of the trees of peace. I wonder. The women spread out over their village, planting tiny trees in long rows, like a green belt stretching over the land. Can you imagine that? A green belt around your waist? But this one's around the earth. The government men laugh. Women can't do this, they say. It takes trained foresters to plant trees. The women ignore the laughter and keep planting. Wangari pays them a small amount for each seedling still living after 3 months. Their first earnings ever. So now Wangari is not only helping the earth, but she's helping people. How did she help the people? Word travels like wind rustling through leaves about the green returning to Wangari's village. Soon other women in other villages and towns and cities in Kenya are planting long rows of seedlings too. But the cutting continues. Wangari stands tall as an oak to protect the old trees still remaining. We need a park more than we need an office tower. The government men disagree, and Wangari blocks their way, so they hit her with clubs. They call her a troublemaker and put her in jail. And still, she stands tall. Right is right, even if you're alone. But Wangari is not alone. Talk of the trees spread all over Africa, like ripples in Lake Victoria. More women hear the talk and plant even more seedlings in longer and longer rows. The seedlings take root and grow tall until there are over 30 million trees where there were none. How does this look different? How did that setting change from when Wangari got home? What do you notice? The umbrella of green in Kenya returns. Women walk tall, their backs straight, for now they can gather firewood closer to home. The land is no longer barren. Sweet potatoes, sugarcane, and maize grow again in the rich red earth. And the whole world hears of Wangari's trees and of her army of women who planted them. And if you were to climb to the very top of Mount Kenya today, you would see the millions of trees growing below you, and the green Wangari brought back to Africa. So today we want to think about Wangari, and we'll look more at the main idea and the details of this story tomorrow. But I hope that when you were listening, you were kind of thinking about the important things Wangari did. And tomorrow I want you to keep listening because you're going to be looking really closely at the story. Today, you're going to take a step back, and on the next slide, you're going to click a link and listen to some information about bees. And I want you to try and listen for the details in that video. So you're going to listen about bees, and you're going to think about when bees pollinate the earth, how does that help other things? So I want you to really be thinking about the bees helping fruits and vegetables by pollinating them. So in the story, you're going to listen for at least one key detail. You might even be able to do two, but you want to listen to those key details and think about how the bees pollinating the earth helps the earth. Because again, it's going to be another story about how we're helping the earth in a different way. Okay? So when you're done listening, if you've printed the page, you can print and draw your picture and write. If you don't have it printed though, on a piece of paper, you're going to draw one picture from the story and think about your picture matching that key detail. So if you're telling me something about how the bees help the fruits and vegetables, then that picture should show it in some way. So there should probably be a bee in your picture somewhere. Okay? So you guys go ahead and listen to or watch the video first, and then you can start with your main idea and details, okay? All right, have a good day.